When you look at yourself, what would you like to change? When you take a good and honest and hard look at you, what would you like to change?
Happy Heart Day. Wait, you say, tomorrow's Valentine's Day. I came for ashes. Am I confused? No, actually, it is so appropriate that Ash Wednesday is the day before Valentine's Day. Because this day is all about our hearts. It's about changing our hearts. The readings proclaim it. Return to me with your whole heart, and rend your hearts, not your garments. A clean heart create for me, O God. If today you hear his voice, harden not your heart. Change your heart now. Behold, now is a very acceptable time. And change from the inside out. Pray to your Father in secret, and your Father, who sees in secret, will repay you. The inside story, the story of our heart, is what God reads. The inside story is the truth we tell. Its chapters are the movements of our own hearts and the choices we make. What we do and what we say is secondary to the why. It is our motivation, the movement of our hearts that counts. Lent is about change. It's about a change of heart. Is there a relationship in our life that is in need of change? Have we convinced ourselves something was okay when down deep we just know it isn't? On the surface, we act like everything's fine. But on the inside, we know it's not. Have we closed off our heart to dialogue or to hear another side of the story? Have we written someone off as cocky or arrogant or stuck-up or rude? Is there a family member or another relationship we just give lip service to? You know, we're nice on the outside, but waging war on the inside? Or perhaps our change of heart needs to be toward ourselves. Do we judge ourselves too harshly? Are we our own worst critic? Nothing we do is good enough, so we look for someone outside of ourselves for approval, someone else to tell us that we are good, that we did a good job, or that we have value. For me, giving up chocolate is a whole lot easier than reflecting on my heart and changing from the inside out. Before I came to the CSC, I lived in a rather large community of 24 sisters. I liked most of them, but I was extremely intimidated by one sister. She was a rather large woman and quite powerful. I avoided her. In a house of 24, you can do that. I was nice to her on the outside, no one would know, but often on the inside I was angry or very afraid. She intimidated me. I felt bullied but powerless to change. And one day she did something that made me really mad. It was the last straw. Our community had agreed to not leave the dirty dishes in the sink, but each sister would clean up after herself. Well, that night I was having a snack in the kitchen when Sister Ann plopped her dirty dishes in the sink and went off. A small thing, yes, but I was angry. And I did not hold back my criticism. I talked about it to all those sisters in the kitchen. Just look at that. Who does she think she is? And then one of the sisters asked me, Linda, when are you going to stand up to her? Well, the very thought made me cringe. How could I do this? But it was time for me to bite the bullet and confront her. Graciously, of course. So I practiced what I would say right out of my Communications 101 course, and I took a deep breath and I approached her. Sister, when you left your dishes in the sink last night, I felt very angry, and I would like for you not to do that. Her response? Oh, okay. It was over, just like that. All the anxiety, all the courage I had to have. Why did I wait so long? The anger in my heart melted. And after that, we became good friends. Is there someone we're polite to but inwardly angry at? Is there someone we need to forgive, or is there someone we need to ask forgiveness from? Do we avoid certain people? Have we stopped praying or coming to Mass because we say, you know, just doesn't help? Have we given up on someone? Have we given up on God? Have we given up on ourselves? What change of heart are we called to make this Lent? God knows our hearts and asks us to rend them rather than our garments. The inside story is what matters, for we are called to purify our motivations, to let go of anxieties that fill our minds, and to reclaim our power to mend fractured relationships. God invites us on Ash Wednesday to look at what we say and do and not cover up our actions or offer excuses or avoid the pain of change. Reading the inside story, having the courage to change our behavior, our perceptions, our prejudgments, will bring about a peaceful heart and new life. So happy Heart Day. Happy Season of the Heart. Happy Lent.
Change is really hard. A few years ago, I was working with folks getting out of prison. And I had a coworker at the time, Shirley, who would come into the office every day. And she'd say, "Hey, Mark, you know what the word of the day is?" And I would say, "Is the word of the day trust?" And she would say every day, "The word of the day is trust." It was always the word of the day. Trust was always the word of the day for Shirley. But she made sure to remind everybody each day, "Hey, everybody, the word of the day is trust." Back then I had a client, Anthony, who had these really long dreadlocks. And he used to always say, "We got to be willing to change everything, fellas." See, Anthony had just done 7 years in prison for dealing drugs. And a few days after he got out of prison, someone shouted at him from behind, "Yo, Anthony!" And he turned around and he saw that it was one of his old buddies from his drug dealing days. And Anthony said, "Man, how'd you know it was me?" And his old buddy said, "Can't nobody forget those dreadlocks." And so that next day, Anthony shaved his whole head. He's been that way ever since. He didn't want people from his old way of life recognizing him. He said, "We got to be willing to change everything, fellas." There's one guy that I worked with who wanted to change. It was Anthony. And I wish I could say that he was doing well last time I saw him, but he's not really. He's still getting into trouble. Why, though? Why couldn't Anthony change? This guy who seemed to be willing to change everything, even go so far as shaving his head, getting rid of the dreadlocks that he had for over a decade, the one thing that people identified him with. But he couldn't make the changes that he wanted to make. I think, at least in part, it had something to do with trust. You see, when people get out of prison, 95% of the time, they want to stay out. They want to stay clean and sober. They want to get a job. They want to get 2 or 3 jobs. They're ambitious. They want to find a wife, a husband, get a car, live life, be happy. But when they've been out for 3 or 4 months, and they still haven't been able to find a job, and all their family and friends are gone, because maybe they just did 10 or 20 years in prison, and they don't know how to build new relationships out here, and they've never used a cell phone, they've never used the internet, and they go into the grocery store and they have literally 10,000 options staring back at them, and they're used to being told when to eat and what to eat and when they can wake up and when they can exercise. And they come out and they're like an alien in a strange world out here. Everything's different. And it seems to them like all these changes that they're trying to make in their lives to do things better, that none of it's paying off. They start to wonder, is this change worth it? Can I make it out here? Can things really be different from what I'm used to getting? People told me before I got out, if I do this and this and this, then my life will be different, and I'll stay out of prison, and I'll make something of myself. But it's not working. Maybe it won't get better. In those times when they're trying so desperately to change something in their lives, I think Shirley was right. The word of the day is trust. Because when life gets this hard and this lonely for ex-offenders, they wonder, maybe I should just go back to what I'm used to. The old lifestyle, the old people, the old coping mechanisms. Even if they know that that life isn't going to make them happy, because it didn't the last time they tried it. And even if they know that that way of life is either going to lead them back to prison or it's going to get them killed, it's still so easy for them to go back to. Because it's familiar, and it's what they're used to doing. For as lousy as it is, and as much as they might hate themselves for making those choices again, it's still so easy to go back to, because it's familiar and it's what they're used to. At least that way, they know what they're getting. Instead of hanging in that uncertainty, where they have to hope and trust and cling to faith that things will get better, that things can change. And you and I think, are no different from any ex-offender I've worked with. Ex-cons have taught me as much about myself as anybody has. Those guys taught me that those of us in this life who do grow and do change and who do discover something better than what we've discovered before, they struggle along the way. But when they struggle, they also hang on to a trust. They trust in a vision that another way of life is possible, even when the results don't seem to indicate it right now. And they cling desperately to a faith and a hope that things will be different, that it will be worth it to make these changes that are so hard for us to make choices that are different and uncomfortable and maybe downright terrifying. And they face that head on, and they just hold on, all the while clinging desperately to that trust that they have. So the word of the day is trust. In just a few minutes, you're going to have somebody who cares about you look you in the eyes. And you will hear spoken just to you in that moment. Turn away from sin and be faithful to the gospel. Trust that you can, and that it is worth the struggle.